Hey, girlfriends. Welcome to another episode of Girlfriends and Goals. We're your hosts, Miosha.
And Samaria.
This podcast is a space where we'll talk about friendships, life goals, a little bit of pop culture, and all things womanhood.
So, on today's episode, we're going to spill the tea on our very first vacation together, even though we've been friends for like over 10 years. But yeah, we're going to talk about where we went, what all happened when we were away, and if we would actually recommend this place or not. So we definitely have a good episode in store. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please make sure you subscribe and, consider rating us 5 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up.
All right, we're going to get into our first segment today, which is called Girl What's Good, where we talk about something we've been loving for the past couple of weeks. It could be a product, a store, a place, anything that we've been loving. So, Samaria, what's been good with you?
Okay, so it's been a few weeks now since I've seen this, but I don't think you have because you haven't mentioned it. But the Best Man final chapters on Peacock. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm. I mean, I've seen it, but I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like you know of it, but you haven't like watched it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I absolutely loved it. I can't wait for you to see it because I think there are quite a few storylines in there that we would enjoy talking about. But I think they did such a great job. That cast, like whoever did the casting back in 1999 or whenever the first movie came out, did such a phenomenal job. Those people are so like beautiful, so talented. They really brought it. And I think the writers, like everybody did what they needed to do. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've seen maybe one or two people on the internet who weren't satisfied with certain things, but
Mm.
based on what they said, it seemed like they weren't satisfied with certain people's storylines. Um, but
Hmm.
I absolutely loved it. I think they did a good job. Every time someone's like redoing something or making a third part to something that already has two parts, especially two parts that we were pretty satisfied with. There's
Mm-hmm.
always this feeling of, oh my gosh, should they just have left it alone? Do we really need? But I really enjoyed it. And I think they did such a great job wrapping it up. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I was satisfied with it. So that's my girl. What's good? It's on Peacock. I think everybody should watch it, especially if you saw the very first movie and loved it, and then saw the second one and loved it. I think you absolutely should watch The Best Man Final Chapters.
Yeah. Follow-ups are always hard, especially when you knock it out of the park on the
Yeah.
first round. And so, yeah, it's a tall order to be able to stand up to. But I will say too, because of the length of time in between the movies, I think that also adds pressure. So there was a good amount of time between one and two, and
Hmm.
then two came out a while ago. So
Like
it's been,
2013.
yeah. So it's a more than a few years in between. And I think that adds to the pressure of like, okay, y'all have had time.
Hmm. But they knew what they were doing. They know what they're doing, and I think it was a job very well done. I I don't want to say much about it because I want you to watch it. But you guys who are listening to this or watching this, like let us know if you've seen the Best Man final chapters and what you thought. Hit us up on Instagram at Girlfriends and Goals Podcast. Or if you're watching on YouTube, of course, leave us a comment about it. But yeah, so that's what's good with me. What's good with you?
All right. Well, I guess in that same vein, I have a show too.
Okay.
I'm copying you. But yeah, so if you know me, I'm not a huge reality TV show person anymore. Other than Samaria forcing my hand into watching Married at First Sight, which
She
I'm
loves
just
it.
kidding.
I didn't have to force her too hard.
Yeah, it wasn't too hard. But other than that, I don't consume much reality TV. But a show that has kind of had me in a chokehold is the show Love Without Borders. And the concept is that I think it's five singles in the US. I guess they feel like they've exhausted many of their options in their own city as far as dating and romance. And so they sign up for this experiment where they're paired with someone internationally. So they're going to be leaving their lives behind for the length of time that their visa is available. I think it's 90 days. And
Mhm.
so not only are they going to a new country, they're also meeting a new romantic partner, and they have the length of the visa to decide if they feel like this is something that they want to pursue permanently. And so, yeah, this is the first, I feel, reality love TV show since Married at First Sight that has really got me excited for each episode each week. I even have one of my other friends who really wasn't here for watching it, but I even got her on board too. So that's how you know I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I'm recruiting people. But yeah, if you're interested in that type of concept of a show, similar to a Married at First Sight type of
Mhm.
experiment, but the episodes are much shorter. I believe they're about 35 to 40
Yeah.
ish
It's like an hour
minutes.
with commercials.
Yeah, so it's not a huge time commitment. I say that's the one challenging piece of staying connected on Married at First Sight is the length of the episodes. But yeah, Love Without Borders, I think it comes on Bravo.
Yeah. I don't think there's going to be a second season.
Oh, don't be a Debbie Downer.
I realistically, like, okay, so the experiment in and of itself is very unrealistic. Like, you have to leave your job, leave your family, like, leave everything behind to go to a foreign country and live with your partner that you are just meeting for the first time. It's like, in real life, who's leaving their job to find love? Like, who's I mean, people leave their country, but they don't go and live with the person. They go and they might meet the person there and then fall in love or whatever. So for me, it is a tad bit unrealistic. I enjoy watching it, but even Married at First Sight to me is more realistic than that. Like, you're still in your own city, you still have all your family and friends around, you have a support system, you're not moving into their house, at least not in these seasons. You're going to a neutral place where there are two rooms and you don't have to, so that's the only thing. I enjoy watching it, but I don't think there's going to be a second season because of how unrealistic it is.
And for some of the couples, there's a language barrier. Even if their
Yes.
partner speaks English,
Yeah.
one of the couples is in France where, they speak French. So, yeah, you're right. It isn't as unrealistic, but I've been thoroughly enjoying it.
She really has. She'll be like, "Are you caught up?" I'm like, "Girl."
Why are you sweating me over this show?
Okay. But yeah.
Uh,
Oh, okay. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the episode and give a little recap, if you will. If you follow us on Instagram, you've probably seen maybe some like clips from this trip that we're about to talk about. But it's technically our first trip together. Would you consider this our first trip together since it was a group trip?
Yes and no,
Okay.
but also because technically this isn't our first trip. Like we've traveled before for a different reason. So I would feel like it's similar to that trip, but we haven't taken just a one-on-one
Mhm.
BFF girl trip, just us two. So yes, it was a trip, but different, I think, than a girl's trip.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
guess we still have to do our trip. We,
Yeah.
we this time we actually traveled together though. So last
Hmm.
time I kind of met you there and we were there for a specific reason. It wasn't vacation, even though
Hmm.
it kind of doubled as it, but that's why I wouldn't count that one.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But so I guess we're getting a little warmer. We're moving a bit closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the reasoning for this trip was to celebrate a big birthday for Samaria. And I would classify this as like a family trip, but not in the sense of like, oh, we all brought our kids. It was family in that it was the majority of family and me,
Well,
basically.
I also don't have any kids to bring, so
Well, like other people too. I consider a family trip one where there are more kids. This was like a family, mostly family adult trip, is how I
Mhm.
would describe it.
So yeah, if you tuned into last week's episode, you would have seen that I turned 30 And my other friend, Crystal, and I were just talking about lessons learned in our 20s and if we're satisfied with what we've accomplished and where we are moving into 30. So I hardly celebrate my birthday. Most of my 20s I didn't do that. And
Mhm.
so this was a really special trip for me because of that, because I don't usually celebrate and I was taking time out to do something for me, and like sacrificing the time and the money to get out and do something that I wouldn't ordinarily do. And if you tune into last week's episode, you kind of heard how a lot of my 20s was about being responsible and doing what I needed to do and being about my business. So it felt good going into 30 to just be able to enjoy life in a different way, I think. So yeah, it was a really, really important trip for me. And I decided to bring along 9 other people. So I didn't think it was a bunch of people until I was talking to one of my nieces, and she goes, "That's a lot of people." And then I had to sit back and think, okay, that is quite a bit of people to bring
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah, and I'd add that you said that this is something that you wanted to do for you, but in planning an international trip and you taking the lead on it, you were really doing something for everyone else. We just had to pay our money and show up,
Yeah,
essentially. So,
yeah.
as much as I think you set out for, oh, this to be for me,
Hmm.
it was for other people too, which I
That's
appreciate you for that.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I think the way I think about it is like the other people. Yes, I understand they got a vacation out of it, but also I wouldn't have wanted to do it without them. So it was kind of selfish, but I get where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah, because I feel like the easiest vacations are the ones that you don't really have to plan as much
That's true.
yourself, where you could just be like, oh, here's the money and kind of everything else, the accommodations
Yeah.
and all those things are already figured out.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So, what was one thing you were most excited for and looking forward to this trip?
This is going to sound very basic, but
Mm.
I mandated a color scheme for one of the nights. And I was so excited to see how that would come through. I actually tried to do this for a family reunion some years ago and told everybody what color to wear, and it failed horribly.
Mm.
Like, I can't even describe how terribly this plan turned out. It was so bad that at one point, one of the people involved was like, I'm just going to switch dresses and put on a blue dress when the color was like yellow. And so
Wow.
it didn't turn out the way it needed to. So it was funny. I invited one of my cousins and I was telling him, yeah, I'm going to have all the ladies wear this color. He's like, oh, you're trying that again? And I'm like, dang. So I was most excited to see how that would turn out, but also excited about being on the beach. I feel like I'm such a warm weather girl. And yeah, so those are the things I was looking forward to the most. How about you?
For me, it was the relaxation. So I'm a beach girl as well, warm weather. I was raised in Florida, spent a lot of time at the beach, but it was just the relaxation of waking up and not having to be responsible for anything else really but myself. And so, as you all know, I'm a mom. And so it's just nice to have a break from that or having a person depending on you to get their day started. And we definitely, me and my spouse, took advantage of being able just to like rest and sleep in. And then the other thing for me was the memories. So, as we mentioned, we have gone on a trip together. I don't mind saying it was for my wedding, it was a destination wedding, but the wedding festivities took up a good portion of that. So, Samira and I feel like didn't have a whole lot of one-on-one time or just time to chill out and relax because it was just kind of go, 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 go until the
Mhm.
day of the wedding. So yeah, I was looking forward to making the memories, taking the pictures, which by the way, the whole coordinated outfit turned out amazing.
Was fire.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be posting more pictures of how it turned out over time. But yeah, that's what I was most excited for.
Okay. And was there anything that you were like scared about going on this trip?
For me, I would say I know this is gonna sound crazy,
Hmm.
but it was if I would be able to attend. And so I think it was, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the end of 2021
Hmm.
when you first was like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna do this." So we're
Yeah.
over a year out. And so I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm definitely interested. I want to go. I want to be there." And
Mhm.
then as some more time passed, when it's like, "Okay, now we're gonna pull the trigger and secure everything." We
Yeah.
were still almost about a year out. And other than planning my wedding, I had never planned anything that far out in advance. And so there was this nervousness that I had that something would happen. Like a year is short, but a lot of life happens in a year. And
Mhm.
so I just had this nervousness of, okay, what all could happen between now and then? I want to be healthy, okay, be able to make this trip, have the means. Also, being a mom, trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be with my kid. And I'm thinking about, I'm having to secure that kind of a year out. Uh,
Mhm.
because I don't want someone to be like, "Oh, I already made other plans." So that was the nervousness I felt, just all the life that would have been lived in that year leading up. And I'm the type of person when I say something, I want to stick to it. I want to do it. Aside from wanting to take a vacation, I felt a need like, hey, I need to show up for my friend. I want to be there. And
Yeah.
I was just nervous about something happening that was outside of my control, that would prevent me within that year from being there.
Yeah. Also, the fact that there were so many people and the majority of us were staying in the same like house. I know a huge concern was, are these people gonna come or are they gonna pull out? Like we're
Listen,
paying our money, but if someone pulled out, like it was such a precarious situation because if somebody pulled out, I don't know what I was gonna do. Like, okay, y'all, we got to pay more for the house. Like, what exactly was that gonna look like?
yeah, because we know how we do. We start the trip with about 25 people, and it could easily be 2 by the time, it comes down to it. And like I said, I know when I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. Samira's the same way. Most of her family I know now, of course, is like that.
Yeah.
But when you're renting or securing a space that requires everyone to show up,
Mhm.
it's like, all right, now we need all of y'all to pull through.
Okay.
No excuses.
Yeah, so that was one thing I was afraid of, especially because I had like this list of 30 for 30 where I told myself I'm gonna try to go to 30 places in this year. And this is pretty much the only one that I made it to. But so it was more like one for 30, but it's cool. But I was really concerned about everything. Like
Yeah.
I was praying really hard. For months in advance. I didn't want anybody to miss their flight. I didn't want anybody delayed flights. Like, if you guys are familiar with what's been going on, Southwest over the holidays canceled a lot of flights. And one of the cities that they did that in was like the it was like DC, right?
Mhm.
And one of our people was coming from DC. It was so crazy because I think her sister had flown to be with her for Christmas. And then they told her they didn't have any flights returning until that Friday. Christmas was on Sunday. She was trying to leave Monday, and they said, "You don't have any flight. We don't have any flights until Friday." And
Mm.
so she was like, "Oh my gosh, if I can't make this trip, I'm just gonna cry." So I was really concerned about flight issues because it was 2022 and now we're in 2023. I was very concerned about COVID, which
Mhm.
I'm like, if one person catches it, because Miosha and I, knock on wood, have been like ducking and diving. Like we haven't gotten it at this
Yep.
point, and we don't want to get it, you know?
No,
So
we don't wanna be in that number.
exactly. And so like, oh Lord, all it takes is one person for something like that to go south. So yeah, so those are some of the things. And then of course everybody's safety, you know, you're bringing people's children from their homes to
Mhm.
a different place, and you just want to make sure that everybody is safe. I wanted to make sure everybody had fun because they had paid the money. So honestly, what wasn't I afraid of, child? Everything felt like it was on my shoulders, not because anybody else made it so, but because I care about these people and I want them to be there. And I want them to have fun and I want them to be safe and okay. So yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the things, not that I was worried, I just hoped that you would still be able to enjoy yourself while carrying that, because I've been in that position of you just want it all to go right because you don't want to feel like, oh, I was the one that let people down. But I do think, though, that everyone that came would understand, like, okay, flights is out of your control. Even, you get to some resorts or hotels and they present one way and it could be different. So
Yeah.
I know for a fact that all of us would have been understanding of, okay, this was out of her control, but that pressure is still there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of places where we stayed, so I guess
Yeah.
we can share where exactly we stayed. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the resort.
Okay. Yeah. So we stayed, I believe it was called the Jaguar Reef Resort
Yeah, slash
at the
Almond
Belize.
Beach Resort. Like it's on
Yeah.
the same property.
Yeah, the Almond Beach Resort. I think you can put any of those in Google and it comes up, but it was in Hopkins Beach and I liked the resort. I would describe it as a boutique actually on the resort
Mhm.
hotel and villa. And what I mean by that is it wasn't like a massive 500 to 1,000 room resort that you would find in like the Bahamas or Cabo. Uh, those resorts are so massive to where many of the rooms, even if you're ocean view,
Mhm.
um, or it says like beach view, you're still probably like a half mile away from the
Yeah.
actual beach. But this one was right on the beach. Our villa overlooked the ocean. We had like a constant breeze. Overall, I liked the resort. Also a plus in that it wasn't so massive was I feel like the town or village was easily accessible. And
Mhm.
so, unlike some of the massive resorts, okay, even once you make it out of the gate or compound, you still have to drive a ways. You're not really walking, quote unquote, anywhere.
Yeah.
But this resort, because it was small, pretty much in the village, it was very walkable, easily accessible, and safe. It wasn't under, like I would say, lock and key like many of the other resorts where there's like one way in, one way out. There was actually like a walkway right from our villa right outside the resort so we could walk into town if we wanted to. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it. Definitely more of a boutique experience, smaller resort, but in a good way.
Yeah. I absolutely loved it. Like I would go back over and over and over and over again to that same place just
Mm-hmm.
because it was exactly what they sold us, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even a little better because us being right there on the beach. And y'all, this is gonna sound like she ain't never been nowhere. I promise I'm from Liberia. There are beaches there, but just like the sound, the constant sound of the
Mm-hmm.
water that we heard and just being right there was incredible. Yeah, so I loved
Mm-hmm.
that particular resort. I would book that again for sure.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add too is that the beaches at the beach in front of the resort is swimmable. I know that sometimes when you travel to certain places, unless you've been to a place that doesn't have a swimmable beach, which there are a few, you
Mhm.
wouldn't think to ask that. I knew
Mhm.
Samaria, she would confirm that up front, but just so you all know, the beach right in front is swimmable. You're able to get in the water. The one thing I will say about the resort that I think we'll probably get into later is
Yeah.
the food options. We'll talk about that more in detail later. Thankfully, we had some great, other alternatives. So I'll
Yeah.
leave it at that.
Yeah. So just to piggyback off of the food thing, I don't even think their food was terrible. It's
Mm-mm.
just especially once you get off the resort and go like a 5 minute or 10 minute bike ride down the street and get even better food. It's like, dang, like, we were really we're gonna like shortchange ourselves if we didn't venture off the resort.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. I wouldn't even say the food was terrible. I think it was
Yeah.
maybe more so hit or miss. Like some stuff was really good that we
Mhm.
had, and then some stuff, some people's plates weren't as appetizing. But like you
Mm,
said, when you go off the resort, it definitely made up for it. I will say that it wasn't an all-inclusive style resort
yeah.
to where you were forced into paying for the food up front. You had the option to buy a food package,
Mhm.
so we didn't feel like, oh, we have to eat every meal here. We were very open to exploring the village and the other options. So
Yeah.
that's one difference than going to an all inclusive resort.
Yes, but the staff, they were fantastic.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was like one I don't even want to call it an issue, but they were just very, very responsive, very kind, very helpful, whatever we needed. So it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I would recommend them. But I'm gonna ask you, what were some of your favorite things that you did while you were on the trip?
My favorite thing, I would
Uh-huh.
have to say, and it's something so simple, but it was the day that my spouse and I went exploring on the golf cart. I don't know
Okay.
why that was so fun for me. So because the resort is in Hopkins, which I would describe it as a village on the beach.
Hmm.
I don't know if, but that's just what it reminded me of, just like a small village town, but on the beach. And so it's very chill, very slow. There's one road, maybe two at most. And so you can't really get lost. And so we just got a golf cart from right outside the resort and rode around and had a great time. And because it's chill and slow, you don't feel unsafe being in a golf cart on a road just because most people are chilling. And so I would say that was probably one of the more exciting things. And then the waterfall excursion, but I'll let you talk about that one if that was one
Okay.
of your favorite things.
Yeah, just to think about the roads, the fact that there wasn't traffic, like there
Hmm.
was never traffic when we were out on the road, whether it was coming from the airport, going to the airport, going on excursions, there's no traffic.
So one thing I like to add to that is Belize is like one of the least developed countries in
Mhm.
terms of infrastructure in Central America. So I think that that adds to that lack of traffic because you don't have these massive resorts. It's not like Cabo or Cancun or anything
Yeah,
like that. So the less development, the less people, the less traffic, and I was here for it. It
yeah,
just
it was
it
just
wasn't stress or stressful. Like you
mm,
go on vacation some places and you just feel this like anxiety, like, oh, I got to get to the resort because it's just like so much going on.
yeah.
And that was not this vacation whatsoever. I feel like as soon as we got off the plane, it was just like chill vibes.
It was. It was. Even I know the other group had a different experience where there were a little bit more people when they were coming off the plane, but even they were saying they got through so fast. Like for us, it
Hmm.
might have been 15 minutes or so from
Hmm.
the plane to outside. So yeah, phenomenal experience there as well. Let's see, what were some of my favorite things? um, so first of all, I tried a lot of things that I haven't tried before. And don't judge me if you are familiar with these things. You've tried all these things. I haven't. And
Hmm.
so I did paddle boarding, which I'm not like a water person. I'm a beach person, but more like a layout on the beach person, not a get in the water type of person. So I did paddle boarding only because I felt really safe with my cousin who's like an amazing swimmer and he's so confident in the water. He's like, "Oh, I'll take care of you." And
Hmm.
he did. So I felt comfortable with that. So I did paddle boarding and had a blast. I also went horseback riding. And again, I know it's basic, but I'm not an animal person. I
Yeah.
don't even like I don't dislike dogs, but I don't really like them like that, you know? Like so it was a lot for me to do that horseback ride. And thankfully the people who we did it with, it was a very long, like we got our money's worth. So I think we did horseback riding in total maybe about 2 hours, where we
Mm.
went like halfway and then stopped at this like creek or I think it was a creek and just chilled for some time and then went the other 45 minutes back. But yeah, so for someone who's not an animal person, this was a huge deal for me. And I just kept thinking, you just have to finish. You just have to finish. And then my horse, so they were like, oh yeah, tap your horse to get them to go. And when I tapped, they were pretty much making fun of me because I guess I wasn't tapping hard enough. And they're like, well, your horse knows that, you're someone they could run over. And so if you don't tap them harder than that, like you have to take control. And the guy tried to give an example. He's like, do you have like kids at home, nieces and nephews at home? I was like, yeah, I have nieces and nephews. Like, they're not all the same. And sometimes you have to really like be firm with one of them. And so I'm like, I don't
Why they
really have
give
those
you the
problems.
why they give you the farm horse?
I was like, why am I the way his name was Sundance or her name was, I don't even know if it was a guy or girl. I didn't care. I was like, is Sundance gonna keep me safe? That's all I cared about. But yeah, so that was that experience. And they kept having to give me pointers along the ride and
Mhm.
all that stuff. So I was just happy that I came back in one piece. And I never felt unsafe. Like there were two people riding alongside us the whole time. They were being very helpful. So I didn't feel unsafe at any point. So that, and then of course the ATVs. So we did
Mhm.
ATVs together, and that was my first time. And
Mhm.
yeah, so those are some of my favorite things. The other thing is probably eating the food.
Yeah.
Y'all, the
The
food was
food.
amazing.
The food really was good. We had some good experiences off-site from the resort. One
Hmm.
thing on the you said that you never felt unsafe.
Hmm.
Belize is or in Hopkins is one of like the safest
Yes.
places to visit. I remember we were asking about renting bikes, and of course, us being from the States, we say, okay, well, do how do we lock them up when we if we need to make a stop? How do we make sure that these bikes won't get stolen? And they were just kind of looking at us like we were crazy. They're like, that doesn't happen around here. It's
Yeah.
never happened. And yeah, so we felt safe the whole time. The
Yeah.
people are so sweet and kind. And also, I think because it's not as developed, one difference that I noticed from going to other more developed tropical places is that you don't feel swarmed by people trying to get you to buy stuff, whether it's on the beach or in the airport.
Mhm.
Everyone's just really laid back and they'll speak and keep it moving.
Speaking of the bikes, like even when we went to get bikes, so the bikes were free. And when we went to
Hmm.
get it, like we saw a chain on them. So we thought they were locked up, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
And so we're just able to take the bikes and go and then bring them back when we were ready. So it was very cool. And then just to your thing about it not being as developed, meaning like it's not as crowded, not that it's like yeah. So not like a negative not developed, but like it's
Yeah.
positive not developed. I just have to clarify
Yeah.
that
Like
part.
they have a road, highway to get from the airport to
Yes.
Hopkins. There's resorts, restaurants, but when I say not as developed, I would don't expect a Montego Bay. That's what I
Mm,
mean by
where everything feels
developed in terms
commercialized.
of
Yeah.
right, more commercialized, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I
Mm.
so the one thing I will say though about eating off resort is you do have to wait a little bit for your food.
A
I
little
think
bit. She trying to be nice.
I would expect that just, based on where I'm from. I feel like things just don't, in the US everything's like 15 minutes, quick, quick, quick. And it's not like that in other parts of the world. Like if you're on vacation, chill, enjoy the scenery, we're gonna
Mhm.
bring your food out. So it was definitely that vibe. But there was one place, and I won't say which because it ended up being such a great experience, but we had to wait maybe 40 minutes or so for our food to come. And so like the people who I was with, they were like, oh my gosh, it's taking a long time. But when they brought that food out, like on the first bite, when I tell you minds were changed, it was like, well, first it was like, this is blowing my mind. Like, this is amazing. It's really good. It was worth the wait. I'm like, geez, is it like, could it really be that good? And I tasted it and it was. So yeah,
Yeah.
the food was fantastic. And I do want to give a quick shout out to this restaurant called Enie's. It's run
Mhm.
by an older woman. Her name is Merva, and she's
Mhm.
been doing business there for like 27 years. She's had the restaurant, and she also has apartments above the restaurant where you can see like a really nice mountain view. And she's like, well, the next time you guys come, you can stay here. You don't have to stay at the resort. But I actually had 2 meals there. I went there for breakfast, and then we were supposed to do a dinner on the beach at the resort. But let's put it like this: when everybody else had hit the town and tried some of the local food, the feedback I was getting was like, it's going to be hard to get us to eat on the resort again. They were like, I mean, like, we'll do it, but the food outside is so much better. And so I just had to make the executive decision like, nobody wants to eat here. We've had our time on the beach. Let's go out and eat some of the like local food.
I will add, I wasn't one of those people. I
Miosha,
held I held all comments.
I feel like you made a comment. You were just like, you
I
weren't
did it.
you weren't
I,
as vocal as the rest, but there was something that you said.
mm,
See, they had already told me like, oh, we like the food here better, whatever, whatever.
mm,
But there was something you said that made me feel like, okay, if Miyosha made this comment that's close to what they're saying,
mm,
why am I putting everybody in misery just to eat on the beach? Like, it just that experience of eating on the beach wasn't the biggest deal to me. It was mostly
mm.
just being able to eat with my people. And so,
Yeah.
um, and I would rather put my money like into a local, business and business owner than the resort. So it was
Yeah.
kind of a no-brainer. I was like, okay. Because at first I was like, oh, maybe we'll just do appetizers on the beach and then we'll go
Oh,
into the
okay.
city. Yeah, into the village. But then I'm like, why do appetite? Like, just do the whole thing out,
Yeah.
We're also trying to beat the sun for our photos because the sun
Mhm.
sets early. So it's like, let's just go out after we take the pictures and call it a day. So
Yeah. And it all worked out. So,
it did. It
yeah.
was fantastic.
So, what's something you wished we would have done differently? Either we or you.
I wish I would have stayed longer, and I wish I had
Mhm.
the opportunity to try more restaurants, but there's only so much that I can eat in a day, so
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. But that's the only thing. Like, if I could have stayed longer and gotten a chance to explore more, I definitely would have. But the timing was what it was. People have to come back. I have to start school again, and people have to go back to work, and so yeah. How about
Yeah.
you? What would you do differently?
Definitely, I would have stayed longer. I will say that kind of getting there is a journey. And
Mhm,
so, even once you land in Belize City, it's
mhm,
about a 2 hour drive to the resort, which is a beautiful drive. It's not anything excruciating. Lots of scenery, the view is nice, but it is still 2 hours. So that's just something just to keep in mind. Maybe if you decide to go to build in an extra day, just so you have more time aside from your
mm,
travel days.
yeah.
One thing that I would do differently, and I know this is going to sound silly, is wear more bug spray. I didn't see not one mosquito. Those are some sneaky mosquitoes down there. I didn't see not one, but I thought I was lathering on the bug spray, but
You were.
apparently,
No,
yeah,
you were.
it was not enough. I was so bit up. No, it could have been because I also did put on perfume because I'm that person
Oh,
that
okay.
always wears perfume. So yeah, that was a L I had to take. But yeah, just more bug spray. Didn't see any mosquitoes, but I definitely felt them. So,
It didn't even feel bad until I got back. That's when
mhm.
like my skin started like itching a little bit.
Maybe it
But
was
yeah,
the humidity, us reacclimating to the cool air.
maybe because I didn't feel like, I mean, I felt something, but it wasn't to the
It
extent
wasn't
when I
bad.
got back. I was like, But I also wasn't lathering up bug spray. I think there was one day that I wore bug spray, and that was for the
Mm.
ATVs. The rest of the day, that was just like, throwing
I'm
caution to the
here.
wind.
Come eat me.
Right. Listen, I was telling my cousin, I'm like, I know those bugs miss me because they had a feast, okay?
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
enjoying themselves. Would you recommend going to Hopkins? I think it's gonna be a yes. But
Yeah.
what are the things like what are the reasons why you would recommend people go to Hopkins for like a trip?
The people and the culture,
Mm,
experiencing something different.
yeah.
Um, I think coming from the US, a lot of times when we travel, I think we naturally maybe want to replicate a little bit of what we have over here, but in
Mhm.
a tropical location. And so
Yeah.
I felt like going to Hopkins was like it felt like I went further than what I actually went. It didn't feel like a 2.5 hour plane ride. And so
Mhm.
I would say for the culture, the people, the food, the vibe, the
Yes.
relaxedness. I've done the big resort vacations, I've done cruises, and I feel like this one, the energy was just so chill
Yeah.
and that I felt relaxed the entire time. I think sometimes going to the bigger resorts where they have this party going on, that going on. And it's just like the hustle and bustle, but it's on a beautiful beach that you don't really feel fully on vacation. And you kind of come back home just as tired as when you left.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the vibe, the people, the food, everyone was just so nice. I
Yeah.
mean, and not that you don't expect for people to be nice, but it was a different type of nice. I can't quite put it into words.
Mhm.
Everyone just felt so genuine from our driver to this woman we met at like this beach bar. It was like a mom and pop type place. The energy was just so genuine and loving. Felt like family.
Mhm.
That's a piece I feel like that I haven't gotten in other places.
Yeah, even for the birthday dinner, right? Like, so we get there, we eat all this amazing food, y'all,
Mhm.
and then the owner comes out and she's like, "Oh, it's your birthday," and she brings out this black cake, and she brings out enough for the whole table to share. So yeah, so I definitely agree with like the people, even the golf cart person. Like we got there, I think really late one evening to rent a golf cart, and she was like, "Oh, you can go and get your car." Like she was so okay with, "Oh, I'll wait for you to come back. I'll just drink my little drink, and you can go and come back." It was just very. Everyone was really accommodating and chill. Like it felt like home. You know
Mhm.
because it's so small. But I would also say I recommend it because it's inexpensive.
Mhm.
And that's like a huge deal for me as a grad student. Like I don't want to go anywhere where I'm having to pay all these like big prices just to experience some different food or whatever. But yeah, I think the food is really inexpensive and really good. What was interesting was one day they had it was some papaya drink was their special for the day, and I was like, "Oh, can I have that
Mhm.
papaya drink?" And the guy goes, "Oh yeah, but we just have to wait for the papayas to come." And I was like, "Oh, like they literally have to wait for someone to bring the papayas over that day so you can have fresh papaya." Like,
Mhm.
so I thought that was really sweet. But yeah, the food is inexpensive. Even travel, depending on when you purchase your ticket, travel can be inexpensive. So just watch that. We had seen prices that were really inexpensive at a certain point, and we're like, oh, okay, cool, we'll wait. And that wasn't in our favor. But yeah, so the travel isn't awful. Friendly people. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would 100% recommend it. And then, did you have any advice you want to give to the people who decide to go to Hopkins, which they absolutely should?
Yeah. The only advice I would give is to do at least 4 nights at
Hmm.
minimum. At least 4 nights, especially if you're, coming from a place where you have a layover. Thankfully, we didn't have one,
Yeah.
but if you have to lay over somewhere, it's minimum 4 nights,
Mhm.
that I would recommend. Yeah.
Yes. All right, perfect. And the one thing I would say is we had really good experiences with the driver or the company that we chose to drive us around. So I would highly recommend using them. Asmio should have put their information in the show notes because I think their website is Belize Ground Transfers. So, and the owner is Julian. I think the name of the company is Julian Transfers and Tours. But
Mhm.
yeah, they were extremely accommodating, very responsive, and so nice. And so I would absolutely recommend them and their drivers because they a lot of them are from Hopkins. They could tell you about the place and about the culture as you drive, and they were very cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, I had a blast and I am so grateful that I got to spend my birthday doing something one, but also doing something with people who were all a good vibe. And we're really just there to make sure like we had a good time. So
Mhm.
yeah, I will
Yeah.
always be grateful, and this is gonna be one for the memory books.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the Girlfriends and Goals podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Girlfriends and Goals Podcast. If you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and do that now. Don't forget to rate, review, and share. Until next time, bye.
Bye.